July 22, 1991, two Milwaukee police officers encountered a terrified man with handcuffs attached to his wrist. The man, Tracy Edwards, told the officers he had narrowly escaped the clutches of a freak who had tried to hold him captive. This encounter would lead to the arrest of one of the most notorious serial killers in history, Jeffrey Dahmer. But who was Jeffrey Dahmer? What drove a seemingly normal man to commit such heinous acts? Known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, Dahmer's chilling story reveals not just the acts of violence, but also the manipulations and deceptions that allowed him to evade capture for over a decade. Let's travel back to June 18, 1978. Jeffrey Dahmer was just 18 years old when he picked up his first victim, 18-year-old Stephen Hicks, who was hitchhiking along a road in Ohio. Dahmer, driven by dark fantasies of control and dominance, invited Hicks back to his parents' home. Once there, they shared some drinks, but the atmosphere quickly shifted. In an unplanned moment of rage, Dahmer struck Hicks with a barbell, killing him. What followed was a gruesome dismemberment of the body, which he placed in trash bags and discarded. I always knew that it was wrong. The first killing was not planned. His chilling confession hints at the darkness that was only beginning to unfold. For nearly 9 years after his first murder, Dahmer went silent. During this time, he enlisted in the army, serving as a medic in Germany, but his struggle with alcohol quickly led to his discharge. Returning to Ohio, he was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct, which led to further instability in his life. In an effort to help him, his parents sent him to live with his grandmother in Milwaukee, hoping she would provide a stable environment. However, the darkness within Dahmer continued to fester. He later stated that the urge to kill never disappeared. It just lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. The long hiatus ended in September 1987, when Dahmer finally found his next victim. Fast forward to September 1987. Dahmer's dark urges were about to resurface. He met 24-year-old Stephen Tuomi at a local bar and lured him to a hotel room. Dahmer later claimed he had only intended to drug Tuomi and wake up with him, but he awoke the next morning to find Tuomi dead beside him. In a panic, Dahmer placed the body in a suitcase and transported it to his grandmother's basement, where he dismembered the remains, disposing of them in the trash. This horrific act marked the beginning of a gruesome pattern that would define Dahmer's reign of terror. From 1987 to 1989, Dahmer's killing spree escalated. In October 1987, he lured 14-year-old James Dockstader to his grandmother's basement with the promise of money in exchange for nude photos. After drugging him, Dahmer strangled Dockstader and disposed of his body similarly to Tuomi's. In March 1988, Dahmer met Richard Guerrero outside a gay bar. Offering him $50 to spend the night, Dahmer drugged and killed him, beginning a trend of dismemberment that he increasingly found difficult to conceal. Dahmer was arrested in September 1988 for sexual assault after a 13-year-old boy managed to escape his grasp and report him to the police. Despite his arrest, Dahmer was only sentenced to probation and released shortly thereafter. In March 1989, Dahmer killed his fifth victim, Anthony Sears, after meeting him at a bar. Sears became the first victim from whom Dahmer kept trophies, preserving his head and genitals. This act of collecting body parts as trophies would become a disturbing hallmark of Dahmer's murderous methods. By May 1989, Dahmer was sentenced to a year in jail for his earlier sexual assault conviction. After only serving 2 months, he was released on work release, allowing him to continue his job at the Ambrosia chocolate factory. Tragically, Dahmer wasted no time in resuming his killing spree. Just months after his release, Dahmer killed Raymond Smith, a 32-year-old man he met on the streets. After drugging him, Dahmer strangled him, took Polaroid photos of the corpse, and then dismembered the body in his bathroom, dissolving the remains in acid. He kept Smith's skull as a memento alongside the skull of his earlier victim, Anthony Sears. As the summer of 1990 wore on, Dahmer's compulsions deepened. In June, he killed again, attempting to preserve the body of 27-year-old Edward Smith in his freezer. However, this did not go as planned, leading him to discard the remains, only amplifying his inner turmoil and depravity. As 1990 progressed, Dahmer's methods grew increasingly gruesome. He claimed 2 more victims in September, both of whom he dismembered and kept body parts from. Dahmer even began eating parts of his victims, a chilling manifestation of his cannibalistic tendencies. In February 1991, he picked up 17-year-old Curtis Straughter, luring him with the promise of cash for nude photos. Dahmer continued his horrifying rituals, drugging, strangling, photographing, dismembering, and keeping body parts as trophies. The cycle seemed unending. In May 1991, Dahmer lured Anthony Hughes, a 31-year-old man, into his apartment. After killing him, Dahmer attempted to revive him in a twisted effort to achieve a zombie-like state. This gruesome experimentation marked a significant decline into the depths of his madness. By the end of May, Dahmer's killing spree was about to reach its climax. On June 30th, 1991, he met 20-year-old Matthew Turner in Chicago, promising him a photo shoot. Once again, Dahmer drugged, strangled, and dismembered him, keeping body parts stored in plastic bags in his freezer. As Dahmer's life unraveled, it became increasingly clear that his violent impulses were spiraling out of control. The smell emanating from Dahmer's apartment began to attract the attention of his neighbors, but it would take one final encounter to bring his horrifying actions to light. On July 15, 1991, Dahmer met a young man named Konorak Synthesomphone, who was just 14 years old. Dahmer lured him to his apartment with the promise of money in exchange for photographs. What followed was a harrowing sequence of events. Dahmer drugged and assaulted Synthesomphone but fell asleep, allowing the boy to escape. Terrified, Konorak stumbled into the street where passers-by found him. However, instead of helping him, they alerted Dahmer, who convinced the police that Konorak was simply a runaway boyfriend. Tragically, the police escorted him back to Dahmer's apartment where the horrors continued. Inside, they discovered gruesome evidence of Dahmer's crimes. Photographs of dismembered bodies, body parts in the refrigerator, and a human skull. Dahmer was arrested and later confessed to the murders of 17 young men and boys, detailing the horrific methods he employed and the psychological torment he inflicted on his victims. His chilling confessions revealed a deeply disturbed mind, one that sought both companionship and control through violence. The horrifying facade finally crumbled on July 22, 1991. After a desperate escape, Konorak's tragic fate became apparent. That night, the police returned to Dahmer's apartment following the complaints of a neighbor about a strange smell. What they found was unimaginable. Ultimately, Dahmer was found guilty of 15 counts of murder and sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison. His fate shocked the nation but also raised questions about how someone could commit such atrocities without being stopped sooner. While in prison, Dahmer expressed remorse for his actions and sought to find solace in religion. He was later murdered by a fellow inmate in 1994, bringing an end to his chilling story, but leaving behind a legacy of horror that still resonates today. Jeffrey Dahmer's trial began in January 1992, capturing national attention. His lawyers attempted to argue insanity, but the prosecution painted a stark picture of a calculating killer. The trial included testimonies from victims' families, revealing the profound impact of Dahmer's crimes on their lives. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is not just about the gruesome acts of violence, but also about the complex psychological factors that can drive someone to such depths of depravity. It serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary life. As we reflect on this story, we must remember the victims and the families left behind, and ensure that we confront the societal issues that allow such horrors to persist. This chilling tale invites us to consider the fragility of humanity and the importance of vigilance in our communities. As a teenager, Dahmer began to exhibit troubling behavior, including a fascination with death and an early interest in taxidermy. This morbid curiosity foreshadowed the horrific actions he would later commit. Studies suggest that Dahmer's actions were fueled by a combination of mental illness, a need for control, and deep-seated feelings of loneliness and rejection. He often described his killings as a way to attain a sense of companionship, a twisted attempt to create bonds with his victims, even in death. This insight into his psyche raises important questions. How do we recognize the signs of someone struggling with deep psychological issues? What systems can be put in place to prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future? Despite the passage of time, Jeffrey Dahmer's story continues to haunt the collective memory of America. His actions serve as a grim reminder of the potential for darkness that exists within individuals and the devastating impact of mental illness that often goes unrecognized. Dahmer's legacy has prompted changes in law enforcement and public policy, particularly regarding the treatment of sex offenders and the resources available for mental health support. Advocacy groups have emerged, focusing on raising awareness about the signs of potential violence and the importance of intervention. As we conclude this exploration of Jeffrey Dahmer's horrifying life and crimes, it's essential to remember that behind the gruesome headlines are real lives forever altered by tragedy. The families of Dahmer's victims continue to seek closure and healing, and their stories should never be forgotten. We must use this knowledge not just to satisfy our curiosity, but to advocate for a world where mental health is prioritized, where victims are remembered, and where our communities are vigilant against violence. Let us take a moment to reflect on the importance of compassion, understanding, and support for those in need. In doing so, we can help prevent the conditions that allow such darkness to emerge again. It's a reminder to us all. We must look out for one another and stand against the forces that seek to harm.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us bring more true crime stories to light. See you in the next episode.